Okay, so welcome to the Summer of Service Supervisor webinar series hosted by Iowa Campus Compact. Today we're going to be talking about effective supervision. And so with us today is obviously myself. My name is Monique Ellison. I'm a program coordinator for Iowa Campus Compact, and I specifically work with our AmeriCorps Vista program.
And I am Carly Bonson, also a program coordinator at Iowa Campus Compact, and I work with our Campus Compact AmeriCorps state and national program in the summer reading program.
Okay. Melissa, she's not hearing audio.
I wonder.
Let's see, because there is. I don't think so, because it's picking us up. Yeah, like when we're talking about mic.
Yeah.
Oh, you can hear us? Okay. Oh, good. Great. Sorry about that. So yeah, I'm Monique. I'm a program coordinator for Iowa Campus Compact, and I specifically work with our AmeriCorps Vista program.
And I am Carly Bonson. I know you. Hi, Lois. And I work with AmeriCorps State and National, and primarily with the summer reading program. So we wanted to kind of dive into this first by just kind of understanding the difference between a summer of service member and a regular employee. So for many of these members, this is sort of an experiential opportunity. So some may be really young, some may still be students, or this may be their first job. And for all of them, they're going to be condensing a lot of information into a very short period of time. So just some things to kind of keep in mind. There's going to be more mentoring involved. You'll want to promote a culture of learning and growth. Be open to hearing member complaints and frustrations, and then providing actionable and positive feedback. And then it's also really important to meet regularly and often so your member kind of knows what's expected of them. And aside from that, then just preparing your colleagues for your summer of service member. And we have sort of an example email here of what you can send to your colleagues.
So this is just an example email. I'm not going to read through it, but this is actually from one of our full-time Vista members at the Cedar Rapids Public Library, and just something that, you can kind of be that ambassador for your organization, because you're the one working with us directly on your grant and with the program, so you understand how this individual who's coming into your organization is kind of positioned, and like what their role is, what they're going to be doing, and no one else at your organization most likely is going to have that same context. And so this is just a primary example of how you can do that. Just say, hey, this person's going to be joining us. This is their role. This is how long they're going to be serving with us. What is AmeriCorps? What is Tyson? Why are we having this individual with us for this time? And just other information related to that. And just so you know too, I'm not reading it because we will send out the slides afterwards in a PDF format, so you will have access to this. And of course, if that's still something that you're not having difficulties accessing, we can send you just like a copy paste Word version too. But this is just something we definitely recommend, and I found that it's been really helpful to really distinguish when you have a summer of service intern with you, why you can't just ask them to like go grab coffee or make copies all the time. It's because they're there for a very specific purpose, and so doing this kind of primer can be really helpful.
So this next slide is just sort of, what does effective supervision entail? And some things we wanted to highlight here are, be an expert in the Summer of Service project and what is expected of your member. Act as an ambassador for your member with the rest of your organization or community. You're going to want to set milestones and progress indicators. So, and use your work plans for that. We also did a webinar on that, which we can send you a link to that. And then, make sure your member has the tools that they need to be successful. So provide resources and guidance. And that might include training manuals or step-by-step processes. Provide contact methods for them. So who should they contact and when and for what? So, and maybe include emails and phone numbers. And then schedule regular check-ins. And that might be weekly or bi-weekly, whatever you feel is appropriate. So this next slide is an example of what a check-in might look like. And some of you may be doing this already with your supervisors or with some of your employees. So you may have a method down already. But this is sort of a template of kind of what we use here at Iowa Campus Compact, and I think it works pretty well. We always start with sort of a personal check-in. So you might ask them about their hobbies or their friends, kind of what they're up to in their personal life. And then move to member updates. So this will be in relationship to their project. So what are they working on that week and what might they need help with? And then you'll want to give them a supervisor update too. So what's going on in your organization that they might not know about? And then, just kind of spell out, what do you need help with? Or what projects do you want them working on for the week? And then next steps include just nailing down a date and time for the next meeting and sort of those follow-up items. So just kind of outline what you want them to work on for that week and what you'll be checking in with them in your next meeting. And then we do have more information from this outline, and it can be found in the VISTA Supervisor Workbook.
Yeah, so this is also a guide. So like Carly mentioned, we use this here at Iowa Campus Compact because this is actually from the AmeriCorps VISTA program, but we find that it's just very helpful as a quick check-in and a tool and a resource. And so even if you're not working with a VISTA this summer within a VISTA program, this is still really relatable to your work and to your members' kind of experience as like a service-based intern, right? So we also recommend, outside of just having those like weekly check-ins or bi-weekly check-ins, I would definitely say like you should be checking in at least weekly, not anything more or longer than every other week, just because so many things can happen from week to week that it's definitely recommended that you check in more frequently rather than less frequently. But this is kind of a performance evaluation model or a deeper dive, like one-on-one, that will be really helpful, I think, not only to serve as a performance evaluation, but to do a deeper check-in with your member about what's going on, because it's a short term of service that they're with you. And so really so many things can change from week to week or even day to day, that this is just a good way to make sure that you're really in the loop for what's happening on the ground with your member, as well as in the know for how you can be best supporting and also managing that individual. And so this is a model that we actually have taken from Willis Dady Homeless Shelter, who is one of our VISTA sites for a full-time service year. And we've just found it's been really successful for their members and relationships and developing like a professional as well as like a mentoring relationship with those individuals. And so I really wanted to share that with you all. And so it's kind of broken into 4 quadrants, right? So talking about accomplishments or especially good performance. And this is something that the member themselves would fill out so that they can do a little bit of reflection of like, okay, I feel like I've been doing this really well. I have this down. I'm feeling awesome. The next one is performance improvement and development suggestions. So again, something the member would identify and like a way for them to kind of reflect on, okay, maybe I haven't been doing this as well, or okay, I'm doing this pretty well, but I could be doing it even better. And this is the way in which I could do that. So again, some more reflective components. And then the other one is obstacles to performance. So maybe some struggles they're having either professionally or personally, especially if you're working with a summer Vista or summer volunteer who might be a college student or is a little bit younger, newer professional. This might be a really good moment to just check in with them, and they might honestly share some more personal things than maybe you're used to with other employees or people that you're supervising. And that's okay, because again, we want this to be a mentoring relationship where they're able to grow professionally and grow in the field. And the last section is what I can do or need from my supervisor to help me meet my job expectations. So this is, again, just a way to kind of set up those next steps and for them to kind of say and to cue you in as their supervisor is like, this is what I need from you. Because some of it, honestly, like if they're maybe struggling with bringing their full selves to their position every day because they're having a roommate conflict or there's a family emergency, those are things obviously as supervisors we have zero control over. And so this is a specific prompt for you and the member to be thinking about, how can I in my position as your supervisor help meet job expectations? And so some of that might be, okay, if you're having all this personal drama or maybe even interpersonal drama with another volunteer or colleague at your organization, how can I as a supervisor, like what even is my realm of responsibility or positionality, right, that you have control over the situation? And so these are just really good prompts to be thinking about and talking through some of those deeper things, rather than the weekly check-in maybe is going to be a lot more task oriented. And so you're just going to kind of say, okay, this is what I'm working on. This is my project. Okay, yeah, my parents came down this weekend to visit. That was really fun. But it's more kind of just on the fly, you're checking in. Whereas this is a bigger conversation, a deep dive or a performance evaluation that you can really just hone in and settle. And so we have 4 bullet points listed out too. So the supervisor will come prepared to these meetings with the top 2 boxes filled out. The member can choose whether or not they want to fill out the bottom boxes prior. If the member is having difficulty with a certain expectation or goal, then that's what you'd put in the obstacles to performance box and brainstorm some possible solutions. You may or may not be able as a supervisor to resolve an issue, but you'll work with the member on that. And lastly, after the meeting, you'll combine all of the notes that you kind of talked about. And this is pretty similar to a full performance evaluation, right? You'll kind of compile all of those notes and send that out to the member. So it's like a completed form and you're both on the same page moving forward. So this is just, we found to be a really helpful tool. And just an example, again, if you want to do your own kind of version of a performance evaluation from your organization that already exists, we definitely recommend that you do that. But just in case you want something more specialized to this project, or you don't have something super formal that would translate well to a short-term summer of service member, this is a really good example. So just some general tips and tricks from along the way from us here at Iowa Campus Compact, as well as AmeriCorps and just our general service experience with summer programming, are these 2 kind of things. So one really important one is that you're going to be kind of setting the example. So you as the supervisor are going to tell them what to do, then you're going to show them how to do it, and then you're going to watch them do it and provide feedback. So this is a really unique model. This actually comes from one of our employees here. Justin used to work for Starbucks, and this is like a big management tool that he was taught. And so we've kind of just tried to include that in most of what we're doing as well, because you really need to walk them through, right? You're the expert in what they're supposed to be doing. Show them how to do it so that they see a physical example, and then watch them do it in the moment and not just kind of send them off so that they're doing it on their own. So you can provide direct feedback and you're not having a month down the road, you figure out that they're doing it wrong and you're kind of like, well, why were you doing it that way? So you're able to address it more quickly. And the next one is providing feedback. So how do we provide feedback, right? And so we call this the what, whys. And so you kind of address what I saw you do was whatever. What I need you to do is this, and then you say why. I need you to do it this way because ... And this is just, again, a really useful way to address a member's behavior and provide feedback. And so it doesn't really come off as the fact that you're maybe like attacking them of like, well, I saw you do this and you really shouldn't be handling like volunteers this way because of . So that way they're not going to take it personally, but you're addressing a behavior that you're noticing and then addressing it from the stance of like, this is our policy, this is our training, and this is why we have that set in place. So we have the tell, show, do, and the what, whys.
Setting a good foundation. Okay. So providing expectations is really important. And I think providing expectations up front is just crucial for new hires especially. And it's just going to set everybody up for success. So you're going to avoid a lot of questions and a lot of issues down the road. And then we have sort of three major expectation groups here. So there's organizational, job-related expectations, and then supervisor employee expectations. So those organizational ones, that's going to include probably like your code of conduct. So things like dress code. What do you want your member to wear to work? Punctuality. What time do you want them to show up to work? And how flexible are you with that? And then how do you want your member to request time off? Just making that clear to them so they know what to do. And then job expectations. So review their job responsibilities with them. Make sure they know what they're responsible for. Train them on processes or specific things that they need to be successful. And then ask if they have questions or concerns, because you may go over these things with them and then they have these questions. Don't want them to hold that. And then lastly, supervisor and employee expectations. So a lot of this revolves around communication. So for example, if they're running late or they're sick, how do you want them to communicate with you? Do you want them to call you, text you, email you? Just make sure that that is clear to your member. And then I think it's always super helpful to just kind of let them know what your supervisor style or philosophy is.
Yeah, this is really important because you individually are supervising them. So we can give them some general, this is how you're going to go about your time in your summer of service. This is like some general skills that we can maybe help you with developing professionally. But you as a supervisor, obviously, you're your own person. You have your own personality, your own kind of style and way of doing things. There's probably your own organizational culture, right? Of like, well, when we send an email to someone, this is how we communicate. And so it's just really good upfront to set out all of these expectations so that there's no room for error. Or if you are encountering issues later down the road, you're able to kind of say, well, remember in the beginning, we reviewed our code of conduct. I told you if you were running late, you needed to email me, not text me, just kind of so that you have a basis and again, a foundation to fall back on if there are any issues that arise later. So for communication, I don't think we can stress enough in this conversation how important communication is, because that's what it is, right? Like we're managing expectations, but within that is that we have to communicate our expectations and have follow-up with that. So obviously having an open door policy, right, is a really good idea, especially in the beginning. So if a member, it's going to probably be a learning curve for your organization, for your community, for their expectations around their position, right? But it's a 10-week term, or it's a very short term for the summer. And so encourage them to come to you. And I think it's important too that you have that expectation on yourself that, okay, I need to be really available for this person, either like physically or maybe more like via email or like Google Chat or whatever way is going to be best for you as a supervisor, so that if they have a question in the moment, they're not feeling like they're going out and they're not prepared. Like they know that they can come to me and I'm going to help and support them, because just because they're the one doing the thing, you're the one asking them to do those things. And so it's really important that that support network is there. However, in my experience, when I've worked with individuals, especially maybe more in that opening new professional kind of role, is that you really set a timeline for that open door policy, because maybe they're only with you for 10 weeks, but if they're coming to you in week 9 and still asking you every single question that comes to their head, and you're at the end of their term of service, you shouldn't really be having to hold their hand that much towards the end of their term, especially if it's something they've been doing from day one. And so I've always set kind of a timeline within that of like, okay, in your first 2 weeks or maybe 3 weeks, you can come to me with as many questions as you want. After that 3rd week, I'm going to expect that you exhaust all of your resources. So the training materials we've gone through, your coworkers, your fellow volunteers, you're going to kind of just have that responsibility. And then if you still can't find the answer, then you can come to me and I will be happy to like walk you through it. But that really helps set up the expectation that like, I'm here to support you, but I'm not going to serve as a crutch your entire term of service. And that will put a little bit more accountability on them too. So definitely recommend that. Actively listening is really important. So when you're meeting with them, don't be distracted. It's so easy nowadays to kind of like, if we're sitting behind our desk and someone's in front of us, they're on the other side of our desk and like our email or our calendar is chiming, just make sure that you're like fully in the moment, because that will communicate like how much they can kind of rely on you, not only as a supervisor, but as someone to like who really values their input and values their time and their experience, because we're asking them to take on this summer of service, right? And so we really want them to know that we're in the moment with them and we're not just kind of like, oh, okay, this is another day. I have all these other really important tasks. It's like, obviously we do, because we're working individuals, right? But just really be engaged in those conversations and ask them questions too, because if you're not asking them questions, they most likely aren't going to be asking you questions. We find a lot in our service programs, especially, that members feel a lot of hesitation around asking their supervisors questions because they feel like they should either already know everything about something, they feel like they're like going to bother you. And so the more that you engage them in that conversation, especially in the beginning, the more it's going to have them actually be coming to you before like an issue really becomes a problem, or maybe it's just, you know, something that they're like worrying about and they don't need to be worrying about. So definitely be active in the moment and be listening and engaged in those conversations that you're having. And then the last one here is just recognizing your members' contributions. So just really make a point to kind of acknowledge that they're doing well. This could be like a little thank you card on their desk. This could be like shooting them an email saying, wow, that event went really, really well. We've hosted it before, but I heard this feedback. You can even ask other staff for observations if you're not the one working most directly with them on a project, but you're more just like coordinating their term, right? So you can ask other staff for that too and kind of say, you know, I was talking to Carly the other day and she mentioned that you did this really well, because it's really important to take time not only to recognize ourselves and the great programming that we're going to be doing this summer, right? But the fact that like our member took on this experience, right? They're living at the poverty level, they're taking this AmeriCorps experience and they're really just kind of owning it, to just show our gratitude in different ways. And maybe there's something that you like to do as a supervisor. This could be something that you ask them while you're kind of doing that on-site orientation stage of like, how do you like to be recognized? Like, what makes you feel good about your work? And then that can kind of help you figure out how you can do that throughout the term of service. So let's say we're in week 5, we're halfway through the term, right? And there's obviously going to possibly be some challenges that we're experiencing. It's bound to happen. We're working with humans. It's a thing. So if your member comes to you with a challenge that they're experiencing, you first need to figure out what needs to happen, right? So you can either give them an answer or a solution, or you can guide them to an answer or a solution. So, but something that's at a bigger level or an organizational level, and you need to kind of make that decision for them, or kind of say, no, this is our expectation around this is our policy. You just give them the answer. Sometimes though, it's a more developmental question or a mentorship question where it's like they obviously just want you to give them an answer, but you're okay kind of leaving the answer up to them, because it's just, you know, I shouldn't have to make every single decision for you. You have the power to kind of decide how to do some of these things that I'm asking you to do, right? So you kind of guide them to that. And so when you're guiding them to an answer or solution, you kind of do some of that active listening or some of the kind of motivational interviewing style. So you're going to kind of restate the problem or the obstacle, right? So what I heard you say was that you're experiencing this. Then you're going to ask them about a solution that they see. So you're going to say, if you could resolve this tomorrow, like let's just say this is like the magic question, right? if this was resolved tomorrow, there weren't any issues, there weren't any more hiccups, what would that look like? Or what would need to happen for that reality to exist? Okay, so kind of just asking them to think big of like, if we weren't putting so much energy into worrying about it, what would happen? Then you need to address their concerns, because this is coming from the validation side of things. It's like, I understand that this is happening. So then you're kind of saying, in the worst case scenario, right? So the opposite of that magical overnight question. In the worst case scenario, what would happen if you did this? And you kind of refer to anything that they've mentioned before. So then you're going to want to create an action plan, because this is about moving forward. And so you're going to say, what's the first thing that you can do today, or maybe tomorrow if it's the end of the day, that will help address your concerns or this obstacle? And then you kind of ask them as their supervisor, what is one thing I can do to help you with this? Because again, you're just showing them that in that moment, in this position with you and your organization, that you're there to support them. So this is just a guide to kind of help outline some of that. You might have your own style for that, which is great, but this is really taken from some motivational interviewing training that we've had, and we definitely have found a lot of success within service programs, but also in other settings too. And again, for those of you that kind of joined us late, we are going to be sharing out a PDF of all of these slides, which will have all of these great talking points, so you can reference them later. But you can also feel free, if something does come up, to reach out to us. So within this is also managing conflicts. So not only like, are they experiencing a challenge, but is there some kind of conflict either that you need to resolve with the member, or they're having with other people? So the biggest thing is, like, if a conflict arises, your first approach is going to be that we ask you handle it locally at the project level. So follow your organization's code of conduct. Make sure that, you know, however you normally handle issues like that at your organization is the same way that you're treating this AmeriCorps member. You can, of course, reach out to us if there's, like, you know, if it's a specific thing around AmeriCorps or the Tyson service program. If it's really specifically in relation to your project and expectations around that, of course, reach out to us. But if it's something you could address locally, we definitely recommend that you do that, because we can't really do a lot, because you're their direct supervisor, not us. However, we do always ask that you inform us if an issue arises, especially if official documentation has occurred. So let's say something happens at an event, they violated your policy, your code of conduct, and you have written them up, or you've had a more formal conversation to address their behavior, address the issue. We have to know about those things because of the grant in which we're operating and working with you on, in case it ever does escalate further, and because it's officially a performance issue that we need to document. And then the last thing with this managing conflict maybe is a little bit more of an ongoing thing that we can be doing, but provide and ask for feedback regularly so that nothing comes as a surprise later in the summer. Usually in our summer programming, because it's a shorter term, we have found that if something does come up, it tends to be later in the term, and there's really not a lot we can do. So the more proactive we are in asking and for feedback, and also providing feedback, right, to our members, the more successful we are, or more likely we are to be successful in our project overall. So, difficult conversations, because they are a thing that happens, right? So we kind of did that a little bit with the motivational interviewing style of guiding people to solutions, but sometimes we need to just dig a little bit deeper, because it might feel awkward, especially for the member who most likely has never had to have this kind of conversation where it's a little bit more serious. You're talking about their performance, you're talking about code of conduct issues. They probably haven't had to do that, so they might be really nervous. So these are just hopefully some tools to help you do that. So the biggest thing, and I mentioned this before, but the biggest thing is that we really want to address the behavior and not the person. So we never want them to be on the defensive where they feel like you're attacking their personality, you're attacking their values or their beliefs. Some of that, of course, might come into play with the grant regulations, right? And then you're just addressing that in relation to their position with your organization. So addressing the behavior and not the person is the first way to go. And so the way we do that, and we mentioned this a little earlier with the what, whys, but this is a really good model for difficult conversations because you're saying, what I saw you do was this, right? You're addressing a behavior because you saw them do something. What I need you to do, again, you're telling them that I observed this happening and I need you to do this other behavior, right? So you were doing this one thing, I need you to do this other thing. And then lastly is you just explaining again why you have that expectation for them needing to correct the behavior. So it's just a nice guiding tool, an example to kind of really help structure the conversation so it doesn't get it hopefully very tense, and also so it doesn't get into the realm of like them feeling like there's even a remote opportunity that you're attacking them personally, because that's what it can feel like. So this is an example that we wanted to provide. So let's say you heard from other staff members that Justin was being rude to clients and making inappropriate jokes during an event. In your weekly meeting, you address your concerns with Justin. So you would say something like, Justin, I heard that you made some inappropriate comments at the event last week. Tell me a little bit more about what happened. So again, you've kind of heard from other people about what happened, but you weren't there yourself perhaps, and you just want to check in. This is also a good primer for the member to show that like, okay, I maybe wasn't there, but I'm also not going to jump to conclusions about what had happened until I first learned a little bit more from your perspective. So this could, of course, open the door for some excuses to come about. That's the thing that might happen. But again, this is just a really good way to indicate that you're with them and you're trying to support them, not only in their position with your organization, but in their professional development. So then after you've kind of heard their story, you say, I understand that you, and this is just you kind of repeating what they had said to you. And then you say, it's our organization's policy that we ... In the future, please make sure to ... So this is a little bit of the inverse of, first you state the why, like, so this is our organization policy to do this, so that's the why. And then you say, in the future, please make sure, and that's you saying, what I need you to do is this. And then at the end, it's really important to ask them questions. So do you have any questions about this policy and why we need to see this change? And again, that's just you opening it up and showing them that you care about their feedback. You want to make sure that you're on the same page moving forward. Because the danger here, if you don't ask that for that question or that feedback, is that like you kind of end it on the future, I need you to do this, and then you both part ways, and maybe the behavior doesn't change, or it might exacerbate the conflict a little bit and the obstacles that you're both encountering, and that's not good for anyone, especially for the success of your organization and your project. So this is just a good kind of script and a way to follow. You of course might have your own examples and things to go off of, but we just wanted to provide this kind of example overall to see like how we would maybe word some of that and some of those tips that we've been providing.
So we know that many of you are probably seasoned supervisors. And so we're wondering if any of you wanted to share some scenarios that you've previously dealt with that you might like to share with the group. And some things to just keep in mind here is like, what do you learn from this? What did you learn from this situation, and what would you do differently?
Yes, so if you want to share, please feel free to unmute yourself, or you can provide something in the chat and then we would just kind of verbalize that for the group, because I think we obviously have our own experiences within this context, but we definitely want to hear from you all, because supervising people is just, there's just so many things that you can do and ways to approach it that we always love hearing what other people are doing and have seen success or have seen potential growth from. And that's okay too if we don't have anyone that wants to share. We just wanted to make sure that we were acknowledging that on this call today, there's a wealth of experience that people have as well.
Okay. If there's anything that you're still concerned about in relation to supervising or supervising your summer of service member that we didn't address, you can either type it in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask, and you can also always reach out to us anytime.
All right. That's all we had. So if anyone has any general questions about your summer of service program and you want to ask those now or in relation to supervision, like Carly just mentioned, please feel free to unmute yourself or put something in the chat box. Just know that you can also reach out to one of us or whoever your primary contact is for your specific program via email or phone. You know how to get a hold of us. We've been in very regular communication, but we're always happy to help and answer questions. Tilly just put in the chat box, thanks so much. This was a great presentation. Thank you for joining us, and we're glad that the information will hopefully be very helpful because that's our main goal. But again, so this is being recorded, so we will share out the recording. If you want to share this with other colleagues that might be working with your summer of service members, please do. But we'll also be sharing out the slides with everyone so you have the actual information and the content available to you. But if there aren't any other questions, we will let you go. We ended a little early today. Yay, you get some of your Monday back. Congratulations. But thank you again so much for joining us. And we are really excited to start working with all of you, especially now that we're getting into May and it's just summer's right around the corner. So we're very excited for all of your programming to get started.
Thanks for joining us today.
Yes, thank you.